Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's kick off today's video with a jaw-dropping tale of family betrayal. Imagine trusting your own flesh and blood only to have him con you out of two separate seven-figure inheritances. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. My brother scammed our dad out of $1 million. Twice. Let me tell you about my brother. Let's call him Chase. He's the kind of person who could sell sand in a desert, all charm and zero conscience. And unfortunately, our biological father, Doug, learned that the hard way. Not once, twice. Back in the late 90s, Chase swooped in on Doug's life after years of no real contact. Doug had recently inherited a hefty sum after his own father passed, 7 figures. And Chase saw his opening. He pitched this new business venture he was launching, complete with fake documents, big dreams, and of course a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. Classic. To really sell it, Chase laid it on thick. Mowed Doug's lawn, helped with yard work, went to church with him, born again, of course, instant spiritual bond, and even spun a tale about an ex-girlfriend who might be pregnant with this child but was leaving the country because of a lawsuit. Insert soap opera music. Then what do you know? That same woman shows up at Doug's door asking for $10,000 to get out of trouble and protect the baby. Doug hands it over. He never saw her again. I'm betting they split the cash on the way out of town. Chase had him sign paperwork, open joint credit cards, co-sign car loans, you name it. Within months, over $1 million was gone. Doug eventually hired a private investigator who confirmed the obvious: there was no business, just Chase pocketing every dime. When Doug finally shut off the credit cards, Chase called him crying from a restaurant in Miami, claiming he was stranded after a declined card. Guess what Doug did? Yep, read him his credit card number over the phone. Because here's the thing about con artists, they offer what people are desperate to have. Doug wanted a relationship with the son. Chase gave him just enough to keep him hooked. Fast forward 10 years. You'd think the man would have learned, right? Nope. Doug sells his $1.2 million house and moves to Miami to start a restaurant with Chase. Guess how that went? Within a few months, Doug noticed money vanishing, checks being written, and shocked, no restaurant ever opened. It was con number 2, bigger and bolder than the first. Now, Doug lives in a rundown apartment in Oregon, broke and still somehow convinced Chase has changed. I reminded him of what happened, asked if Chase ever paid back a cent or even apologized. Doug's response? No, but he's trying now. My eye twitched. Bonus insanity, Doug once told me he was paying a woman named Tanya, someone who apparently went to school with Chase, $3,000 a month. No, not for rent or business. He claimed she was his companion, but they weren't having sex. I told him flat out, dude, you're being robbed. And yes, Tanya magically disappeared when the money ran dry. Chase eventually had to leave our hometown. The cops were sniffing around. He was involved in some MLM pyramid nonsense, shady loans, probably more stuff I don't even know about. I've come to accept that he's a sociopath. There's no conscience, no remorse, just opportunity. As for Doug, he still clings to the idea that all of this was his divine punishment for falling away from God and drinking a beer now and then. I think it's easier for him to believe that than to admit his own son wrecked his life for fun and profit. I've got more stories, plenty, but that's the one that still makes my blood boil. $1 million, twice. And somehow Chase walks away every time, laughing. This isn't just a family tragedy, it's a warning. Con artists don't always look like slick Wall Street villains. Sometimes they're the charming son who shows up when the will is read. The best defense? Question too good to be true. Love shouldn't come with a price tag. And our second story. Wearing a name tag does not equal working at your store, Karen. So I have 2 stories. Right after I got hired at Chick-fil-A, I worked a few shifts, and my mom and I went to Target. Being in my red polo and dress pants with a name tag that says Chick-fil-A, I thought I wouldn't be mistaken for an employee who would be in a t-shirt and jeans, but of course, I went in and it happened. One important detail, I'm half Hispanic, but having been born in America and having been homeschooled, I only speak enough Spanish to tell people that I don't know Spanish. Well, this lady walked up to me and started talking. She was, however, behind me, so I assumed she was speaking to someone else until I felt a tap on my shoulder. She just started pointing at her shirt and looking really confused, and in English, I said, I don't speak Spanish. So in very broken English, she asked me how much the shirt was and asking about sizes, and I responded, oh, I don't work here either. And she rolled her eyes and muttered as she walked off to find an actual employee. Several minutes later, I'm in the Pokemon card aisle, and these two guys start asking questions, and at this point, I'm hoping they aren't trying to talk to me because I don't feel like explaining again that I don't work here. So they specifically get my attention, and I, as politely as I could muster, motioned to my name tag and say, guys, I don't work here. And they responded with, geez, you could have just said that. You don't have to be rude. My mom looked at me like, what was their problem? You didn't do anything. About a week later, I was at a different Target, and a mom and her daughter walk up and say, ma'am, where is... At which point I cut them off, which, yes, was rude, but I'd had a long day. And I said, I don't work here. And the daughter saw my name tag and said, Mom, she works at Chick-fil-A. And her mom starts laughing and apologizing. Towards the end of my trip, the same mother-daughter duo spot me again, but I had my back to them, so they start to ask about some item until I turned around, and the mom says something about being sorry and how we keep running into each other. Bonus story, my restaurant happens to be in a mall, and we deliver to other employees throughout said mall. On several occasions, I've delivered to Macy's and been stopped by people looking for various items. I deliver there so often that I know my way around pretty well, so I usually give some sort of direction. But once in a while, the person asking for help isn't satisfied with just directions. They want to be shown where everything is, and they ask about sizes, and one time I looked at a lady and, in front of employees, I said, sorry, I don't work here. And she says, well then, why are you dressed like that? Who comes to a store dressed like the employee when they don't work there? So I flashed her my name tag and said, I work at the Chick-fil-A in the food court. I'm just delivering food, ma'am. And she turned around and huffed her way to the employees who'd been watching. One of them, who didn't end up helping her, gave me a look of, sorry you have to deal with that. Thanks for the food, though. I've also been stopped in JCPenney and been mistaken for an employee, but no real stories there. Edit. For everyone saying bring a jacket after these events, I actually did start wearing my Hero Academia jacket everywhere if I knew I'd be in uniform for an extended period of time before or after work. People don't really stop me anymore, except for one lady yesterday in the mall. I was sitting down drinking my Starbucks in my newer long-sleeve light blue work shirt, which has a large Chick-fil-A logo on the left side, and I had earbuds in. This was at my mall before it was technically open. Doors were open, stores were not. She walked up and just started talking. I noticed her out of the corner of my eye and said, sorry, what? After I took my earbud out. She proceeded to speak very rapidly in Spanish, and I said, sorry, I don't speak Spanish. And she, looking very confused at this revelation, says, oh, do you work here? And I said, in the Chick-fil-A in the food court. And she just says, oh, and walks off. I probably could have helped her, seeing as I know a lot of the mall staff and therefore know a lot about the mall. Oh well. Jobs can fire you if you say a curse word in your uniform in a different part of your city if they hear about it and say, they do not respect our core values, so don't wear your work uniform anywhere, ever. And our last story. My entitled neighbor tried to claim the beach as her backyard. I live in a modest little place in Laguna Beach, California, one of the last original homes wedged between a sea of glass and steel monstrosities that scream influencer money and no personality. While the architecture's gotten flashy, the attitude's even worse. My next-door neighbor is the poster child for what happens when you mix Chardonnay with unchecked entitlement. We call her Beachfront Karen. She's got the whole aesthetic down, oversized sunglasses, designer caftan fluttering in the breeze, holding her wine glass like it's a scepter. Her Range Rover blocks part of the street like she's daring the city to tow it. If you breathe too loud near her hydrangeas, you'll get an eye roll. But her true talent? Making a public nuisance of herself while pretending she's the victim. Anyway, last week she took her delusion to a new level. It was early afternoon, and I was walking my dog, Oscar, down to the beach access just below our street. The sun was out, the tide was low, and I figured it was a good time to let him sniff some kelp and chase sandflies. But then I saw it, Karen, on the beach, with ropes and stakes and laminated signs. She had literally roped off about 20 feet of the beach in front of her house, forming a little rectangle like she was fencing off her personal kingdom. The signs? Private area, homeowner use only, no trespassing, protected zone, laminated like she thought the Pacific Ocean was going to respect her office supply level authority. And of course, she wasn't just setting up a pretend yard, she was screaming at people. Couple with toddlers who'd set up towels a good 10 feet outside her ropes, yelled at. A pair of teenage girls snapping selfies by the waterline. "You're harassing me," she screeched. But the worst was when she screamed at a little kid, couldn't have been older than 6, who was building a sandcastle within her imaginary boundary. "Get off my property," she shrieked. I stood there with my jaw in the sand, watching this woman full-on lose her grip in front of dozens of stunned beachgoers. Some moved away, not wanting to deal with the crazy. Others stayed and argued back, and thankfully someone started filming. By that evening, the video, Karen flailing her arms and claiming harassment because someone dared to sunbathe near her precious view, was uploaded to TikTok. Within 24 hours, it had over 2 million views. And guess who else saw the video? The California Coastal Commission. See, in this state, beaches are public property up to the mean high tide line. That's the law. You don't own the sand just because you shelled out $6 million for a house with an ocean view. And the commission? They don't mess around. Karen was hit with a formal violation notice. They gave her a short window to remove all unauthorized obstructions or face fines of up to $11,000 a day. Not eventually, not maybe, daily. She tried to argue, of course, claimed she was just maintaining her privacy and protecting her family. But the state wasn't buying her upper crust sob story. A few days later, a crew from the city showed up in broad daylight. They walked down with bolt cutters and ripped out her rope barriers while half the neighborhood watched from the boardwalk. It was glorious. Karen didn't even come outside, just watched from behind her tinted windows like a Disney villain being dethroned. Word is she's lawyered up and is exploring her legal options, but even the HOA laughed her off when she tried to complain about community disruption caused by non-residents. The board president straight up told her, "Karen, if the beach bothers you, maybe buy a house not on it." Since then, she's gone quiet. Her blinds haven't opened in a week. The Range Rover hasn't moved. I think she's hoping the internet forgets. But with that video still making the rounds and now a parody dance set to her yelling, "Get off my property," climbing the Reels charts, I don't think we're quite done watching this play out. So yeah, you can buy the house, you can buy the wine, you can even buy the laminated signs, but you can't buy the beach. You handled it perfectly. Let local law and a little social media outrage do the heavy lifting. And that daily $11,000 fine? Pricier than any designer caftan. If Karen ever thinks she can bully the tide, she'll learn the hard way that the ocean doesn't take appointments. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.